This is the Vanatoo Transparent One Encore. It's a powered MIDI monitor that retails for, let's just round up and call it $600 a pair. Now, some of you may have noticed that there are a lot of reviews out on these speakers, especially recently. So in light of that, I decided, you know what? Instead of rehashing the same thing over and over and over again, why don't I just focus on the natural performance envelope of these speakers, specifically as it relates to normal 2-channel use and desktop use. So if you're here to find out how they sound on Bluetooth, well, I'm not going to be the guy for you. Instead, I would encourage you to check out reviews from Z Reviews, Joshua Valour, JoenTell. I have links down in the description box below if you're here for technical information. But if you just want to know how they sound and you want just a basic rundown of what you get, then stick around. So yeah, let's roll that intro. Okay everyone, so here they are, and as promised, I'm going to try to keep this section as brief as possible. So what you're looking at is going to be the third product to enter the Vanatoo lineup. Now Vanatoo is a relatively new company. They entered the business in 2012, but since then they've carved out quite the reputation for themselves. They're known for offering small speakers that pack a lot of features and good sound for not a whole lot of money, and that leads me to these speakers. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to focus on the driver configuration, and then I'm going to briefly touch upon the features that you get with this product. So starting with the drivers. Up top, we're going to have a 1-inch aluminum dome tweeter, and beneath that, we're going to have a 5¼ inch aluminum woofer. Now, this woofer was designed by Vanatoo for this speaker. These drivers are going to be tied together with a DSP crossover that's not only meant to smoothen out the top end a little bit, but to also give this speaker natural bass extension down into the 40 hertz range without having to rely on that artificial bump between 60 and 100 hertz. And I gotta say, after listening to them, I think Vanatoo did a great job there. Now, each speaker is powered, which means you're going to get 20 watts into each tweeter and 100 watts into each woofer. That's pretty cool. Now let's turn it around. Okay, so on the back, you're going to see a 5¼ inch passive radiator. Beneath that, we're going to have our volume control, 2 tone controls, one for bass and one for treble. We have our power switch. We have an attached power cord. Some people are going to have a problem with this, but honestly, there's no room for an IEC, and this cord will get the job done just fine, and the length seems adequate. Beneath that, we're going to have a sub out. So people who love subwoofers, that's going to be great news. We have a 3.5mm input. We have a service port. This will also be useful for charging your devices, USB devices. We have a USB input, an optical input, a coax input. We have a little button for Bluetooth pairing. And lastly, we have this little left to right switch. So if you need to put the speaker to the left, you can just hit this switch. It's now going to tell the speaker that, hey, this needs to be to the left, and this makes sure that you're getting a presentation that's in proper phase. Otherwise, that's about it. It comes with this nifty little remote. So yeah, I think we covered all the bases. Now let's talk about how it sounds. Alright, so to kick off this review, I think it's important to mention how these speakers weren't designed to only satisfy audiophiles like myself. Instead, they were designed to appeal to a wider variety of individuals, people who say, hey look, I want a high quality listening experience, I want it from something compact with a lot of features, and I want it to sound good with my music and movies and video games, or maybe a mix of everything. You get the idea. But having said that, since I am an audiophile, that's exactly how I'm going to evaluate these speakers. Now, I think the best place to begin is to start off by going over what you could expect if you were to take them home for yourself. And I feel like most people are going to agree that 3 things are going to become immediately obvious when you listen to these speakers. Number 1, they're all about clarity. Number 2, they're all about strong bass extension. And then number 3, they're all about giving you great on and off axis performance, which means they're going to sound good whether or not you're sitting in between the speakers or whether or not you're walking around the room. Now, going into more detail, first let's focus on the character. So if you're looking for warm and rolled off sounding speakers, these are not going to be for you because they're almost on the exact opposite end of that spectrum. Instead, they're going to be lively and forward sounding. They're going to take on a cool tone. And that's because when you listen to them, you're going to notice that the treble is going to be spiked up a bit. The upper mid-range is going to be a little bit thin. And the rest of the mid-range and bass is actually going to be relatively flat sounding. Now, let's go into even more detail by first looking at the treble, or talking about the treble. So anyways, when it comes to the treble, they use an aluminum dome tweeter and you get this classic give and take situation. So on the plus side, this tweeter is going to give you a whole lot of detail for the money. And if this is your first time listening to a speaker like this at this price point, I think you are going to be floored by all the information that you are probably missing out on before buying these speakers. It's great at taking all this subtle information and just making it very clear and easy to discern. But on the other hand, if you're an experienced audiophile, then you're going to notice that, well, it does take on that classic metallic tone. Now, you have to decide for yourself what it is that you like. So, moving on to the mid-range. As mentioned before, the mid-range is going to be a little bit thin, particularly in the upper mid-range. And the good news is this gives the sound some depth, and the mid-range itself is going to be, just like the treble, effortlessly clear. It does a really good job of extracting subtle information within recording and giving it to you in a way that's very easy to pick up on. But on the other hand, if you're into vocals and you're into tone, you're going to notice that vocals are going to sound just a little bit hollow, whether it's male or female, and that may bother some people. Now, I did notice that when you put about 5 or 6 feet of space between yourself and the speakers, the mid-range does fill out a bit, but in the near field, that's more or less what you're going to get. And now let's move on to the bass. So the bass, of course, is going to be what this speaker does very, very well. The bass, much like the rest of the presentation, is going to be surprisingly agile, very detailed. You can listen to complex bass notes, and it's going to keep up with it very well. But what's going to impress most people is how strong and confident the bass sounds for a speaker that is this small. Now, of course, it has a sub out for people who really want something visceral, but I think the bass is going to be satisfactory to most individuals. I mean, even I really, really enjoy the bass out of this speaker. So moving on to other elements of its performance, the imaging is going to be good. No, it's not going to give you this super wraparound soundstage, but in the near field especially, I think most people are going to be very satisfied with it. There's going to be good focus in between the speakers. Everything sounds phase correct, so we're all good there. When it comes to dynamics is going to be okay. I mean, look, it's a small speaker. It's not going to move a ton of air, but I think it's respectable for what it is. Now, when it comes to noise is oftentimes a big problem with powered speakers, especially affordable powered speakers. Now, these speakers aren't absolutely quiet, but they are much quieter than the audio engines and the Fluences that I reviewed earlier this year. So noise, I think, is acceptable even in the near field environment. And lastly, I want to comment on near field performance. I think this is where they sound the best, especially if you're into playing video games and or you just basically do a whole bunch of different listening, whether it's to music, movies, video games, or a mix. I think this is where they shine the best because you get that detail, you get great bass extension. A lot of people may feel no need to even get a subwoofer, and you just get this clear, nice sound. Anyways, they're not going to be perfect though, so yeah, let's get to those imperfections now. So I think I covered most of the caveats already. The bottom line is that these speakers have a very distinct way of doing things. So if you like a sound that's what I described earlier, something that's lively, something that's all about clarity, something that has good strong bass extension that sounds good both in the on and off axis, and you like the features that come with it, cool. If you want something that's smoother and or warmer sounding, then there's going to be other options for you. But that's really going to be the case with any speaker. There's no one product that's going to be for everybody. I think the only legitimate complaint that I have about the Vanatoos is that I wish there were RCA inputs on these speakers. Not just a 3.5 millimeter input connection, but proper analog RCA inputs. That definitely inconvenienced me during the reviewing process. I understand why they weren't included, but I think that definitely is a strike against them when it comes to the goal of something that's full featured and easy to work with. Anyways, that's just going to be it for the caveats, and that leads me to my final thoughts. So wrapping this whole review up, there's a lot to like about these speakers. They're well made, they offer good features for the money. Yeah, I wish they had a set of RCA inputs, but honestly, I think most people are going to be satisfied with what you get out of these speakers, and then there's going to be the performance. I feel like people who are shopping for speakers at this price are going to want something that's all about clarity, and they deliver on that big time. Now, obviously, this is the kind of product to where you really have to hear it for yourself in order to determine whether or not it's for you. But the good news is that Vanatoo offers a 30-day trial period, so you're going to have time to deduce for yourself whether or not these are something that's going to make you happy over the long haul. Now, normally at the end of my reviews, I have comparisons for you guys, but I'm not going to have anything for you this time around just because I no longer have a direct competitor in-house to compare these two. So this is pretty much going to be my take on the Transparent 1 Encores. Good speakers, a solid value, and that's about it. Anyways, guys, as always, thanks for watching, and until next time, peace.